We are closer to the edge of a worldwide computer program dictatorship akin to China's. The dystopian order of the New World, completely digitised and a realm of extreme total control. The social credit system. The incredibly invasive web of information woven together to create an enormous complex database that will ultimately be used against us, as we've already seen with the introduction of the vaccine passport and track and trace systems, will be used as the ultimate system of behavioural and social control of a population, specifically the people below a certain social class, and that likely means you and I. To expand on how the social credit system will be implemented in the world, in particular the West, it's important to understand the blueprint for this and how it is being practiced in other parts of the world, specifically and notoriously communist China. This dystopia exceeds the ideas behind that infamous Black Mirror episode, as we see how much worse this system is beyond what we could ever possibly imagine to be realistically implemented. I'm not talking about just being rated and affecting what job you're able to get or schools your kids can go to. We're looking at possibly heading towards serious issues like incarceration for the wrong opinions or even forced re-education if we eventually head towards China's route. China even has forced sterilisation of citizens in sterilisation centres, in most notably the Uyghur Muslim population, in which is quite underreportedly a genocide happening right under everyone's noses. And no, that is not a conspiracy theory, despite what Chinese officials and communists say. Under the guise of merely punishing deserving criminals or being compared to the financial credit score we've somehow accepted as the norm without even knowing it, the social credit system seeks to not just punish people, but to split the population into distinct castes and create different districts of stratum within a constructed collectivist civilization akin to a robotic ant colony. Only every action you take is monitored and subsequently rated. That will result in either a grave consequence or pitiful reward by the state depending on the action digitally recorded. Trialled initially in a few regions in 2009, before launching a national pilot with 8 credit scoring firms in 2014, the Chinese SCS has developed further and further to becoming the ultimate stranglehold of human expression, and to destroy what it means to have emotion and individual personality. In essence, what it means to be a human being is so controlled that it has consequently been destroyed. Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao was praised after trial programs he introduced to prove how effective it was at micromanaging populations and strictly controlling what people will, won't, would and wouldn't do or say. An estimated 80% of provinces, regions and cities have introduced a version of the system or about to do so, which shows how rapid officials and leaders have been at rolling out extreme draconianism. A common theme in the policy documents that establish the social credit system is the term Shengjin, variously translated as trustworthiness, honesty or morality. The state rates its citizens based on the behaviours, beliefs and actions that are recorded by surveillance systems and workers that audit them. China's citizens cannot rate each other, and there are over 200 million surveillance cameras in China keeping tabs on the 1.4 billion residents across the country, as well as official information collectors that help impose the social credit system, also known as enforcers, the paid snitches working for the communist state. The baseline for each citizen is 1,000 points per person, in which the government gives so there is a constant equality amongst its citizens. The scores are part of a tiered rating system, which rates them based on their credit worthiness, going a step above the caste system of countries like India to give people a score determining the privileges they're allowed or punishments they must endure. For scores 1050 and over, ranked as AAA or AA, you get benefits like healthcare priority, free healthcare checks under the age of 64, and get to reap the rewards at the top of the social hierarchy. Now for scores between 960 and 1029 points, ranked as A+, A or A-, your kids get priority for certain schools, and the government can also give you the privilege of becoming a model citizen for the rest of society for publicity. school enrollment depends on model citizen status, and you will get preferential care and treated better in employment with preference over other candidates that apply for the same job. Scores between 850 and 959, ranked as B, are locked into that rank for 2 years with the obligation to have lectures on how to be a better citizen with visits of government officials and experts. You are essentially subjected to re-education. C rank, scores between 600 and 849, are locked into that rank for 3 years before you can move up rank. Government visits and inspections are routine, and you will be kept on a list where your information will be stored by government officials to keep tabs on you. You cannot receive welfare, cannot win awards or honours, and cannot run for political office. The lowest rank, D, for scores below 599, are seen as the lowest of the low. Regarded as untrustworthy by the government, you are locked into D rank for 5 years before you can rank up. You're publicly blacklisted and revoked of all titles and qualifications you've obtained. You're subject to lose your job, government funding, and travel ability. You are rewarded or penalised depending on the actions you commit that the state defines as good and bad. For example, talking negatively about the government or an official on social media will have you lose a lot of points. Any sort of political dissidence is penalised by the CCP, and they will be sure that you know your place when talking about them in such a way. The government will do whatever they can to get rid of you and silence any criticism of the status quo. Illegally teaching people alternate information or alternate education costs you as much as 50 points for every time you offend. Only government approved education and information is allowed to be taught and monitored. It's all government controlled. If you snitch on those committing bad behaviour, you are rewarded for your commitment to the Communist Party and the state. So you can tell there's a lot of betrayal going on within the snitch culture that they've actively promoted and instilled, especially if you're at the bottom barrel of society. The consequences of a poor social credit score are very, very serious. It affects travel prospects, where you're able to live, who you can socialise with, your employment, access to finance, and the ability to enter into contracts and buy homes. This is social control like we've never seen before. Everything from what you buy, to how you behave, to what you do on a daily basis, dictates what level you're allowed to participate in society. Every single aspect of your entire being is monitored and managed. It's a form of complete and total control on a microscopic individual level to micromanage each individual citizen on a scale not seen before, that grants an evil, albeit genius, strategy of dominating the macros of society. After all, the collective is made up of many individuals. In order to create and regulate a singular structure that adheres to one belief system, what better way to do it than to issue and control a score that affords citizens certain freedoms and punishments to keep them in line. The detractors of the system allege that in countries like China, this tool is used to limit free speech and individual rights on a scale and mechanism that we've never seen before. According to independent journalist Matthew Tai, to date 27 million airplane tickets and 6 million railway tickets have been denied to Chinese citizens based on their social credit score. Now imagine you were denied a travel ticket because of your political opinion or undesired behaviour and personal decisions that are just part of what it means to be a normal human being. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? Let's look at what happened with the introduction of vaccine passports, for example. Citizens around the world were initially told that such a system was dystopian and not even remotely possible, a violation of our human rights that was nothing more than a conspiracy theory. People were slandered for fear-mongering and spreading misinformation as such a system couldn't possibly exist in the free world that we apparently live in, that it wouldn't ever be accepted, and we were merely conspiracy theorists worrying about nothing. Until the so-called health pass became a reality. Governments the world over began to implement the vaccine passport system, which would dictate where and under what conditions you as an individual could travel, eat, or work based on your vaccine status, ushering in a new medical apartheid that would seek to punish those who would not be injected with a pharmaceutical drug. This was the initiation of new acceptance to control our bodies and the ability to decide what happens to them. We were told to sacrifice our personal freedom for the illusion of safety under extreme laws, legislation and enforcers that would become normalised under the guise of a greater good. Once a conspiracy theory, now a reality, the vaccine passport is a bit like Marmite to most people. It's either loved by the fearful and authoritarian types that want to control the medical decisions of others, or hated by those who value their freedom and human rights, such as bodily autonomy. However, one thing is clear and acknowledged by everyone, including government officials: it's a tool of human control. The system quickly became normalised by politicians, celebrities and the mainstream media, with many switching their positions of the concept from being dystopian to a great move for society in a matter of months, stating that it would help open up society to those who are willing to serve the greater good and penalise those who don't.
And now that they're fully protected, their lives are beginning to get a little bit closer to normal, if that is, they have the vaccine passport. That's an app or a printout that they need to take and show at the door as they go into, for example, a swimming pool or a gym. And if they've got it, they can go in and they can enjoy some exercise.
And this is the same guy that just passed this law in New York City where you have to have a vaccine passport to go everywhere. You have to have a vaccine to go to a restaurant, to a gym, to any place where people gather. It is crazy.
Well, I've already got customers that are asking, has the engineer been vaccinated? So we have an identification card that they carry with them, and that's just going to have on it vaccinated, and people are going to be, over the moon.
Have you been vaccinated yourself, Charlie? Have you been vaccinated yourself yet?
No.
Even though it didn't actually make sense and there were little logical consistency to support their rhetoric, they continued to gaslight those who saw through the corruption and coerced the population into getting something injected into them that wasn't exactly very transparent. Countries like Israel, Italy, Spain and France were the first to go full steam ahead with the vaccine passport, with many other countries soon to follow, going by names such as the Green Pass to put a positive marketing spin on the rather invasive digitised database of our confidential medical information that would tell the likes of employers, airlines and restaurants what jabs we've had and how many.
But if there's one lesson to be learned from Israel, it's that you need a somewhat aggressive healthcare system that is actively seeking people out and trying to get them vaccinated. Israel hasn't been waiting for people to ask for their jab. It's been going to them directly.
Failure to disclose such information or having no COVID jabs results in a negative status, meaning you'll be fired from your job and restricted from travelling or eating out at restaurants and socialising depending on what country or state you lived in. Uproar about the vaccine passports were rampant, and demonstrations worldwide were held to vehemently oppose the infringement of their human rights, with the ability to travel, retain medical confidentiality and right to maintain bodily autonomy violated by the newly installed totalitarian system. Despite the fact that vaccinated individuals were still vulnerable to getting infected and spreading the apparent virus, the vaccine passports were pushed and pushed and pushed, even though the damn obvious doublespeak was on all of our TVs and smartphone screens.
Means for instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person to person, spreading and spreading, sickening some of them but not all of them, and the ones that it doesn't sicken don't know they have it, and then they give it to even more people because they didn't recognize they were, right? Instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person, potentially mutating and becoming more virulent and drug resistant along the way, now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person. A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus does not infect them, the virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else. It cannot use a vaccinated person as a host to go get more people. That means the vaccines will get us to the end of this.
When vaccinated and unvaccinated people are mixing, unless there is proof of vaccination, everybody should still be wearing masks. And so I actually support what the CDC is now doing, which is going back to this indoor mask requirement, because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated, that they have been walking around without masks. In the past, we know that vaccine mandates are effective. And I think we really need to be reframing how we think about them. We should be thinking about this as we do drunk driving. You have a right if you want to be intoxicated in your home or in some other setting at a bar, let's say. but you do not have the right to be intoxicated and then get behind the wheel of a car in a way that you could potentially endanger other people. And so I think that the vaccine mandate concept is going to be increasingly important because, for example, I have 2 unvaccinated young kids. I don't know that someone has the freedom, so to speak, to transmit COVID-19 to my unvaccinated kids or to somebody with immunocompromise or cancer and is on chemotherapy. But this is not just a pandemic of the unvaccinated. This is also spilling over to the vaccinated. And those who are vaccinated, we now know, based on the CDC, they are now able, but with the Delta variant, because they carry so much more virus, they could transmit it to their unvaccinated family members. And so I, for example, even though I'm fully vaccinated, my children are not because they're too young to be vaccinated. So I need to be now careful for my children because of all the unvaccinated people around us.
Plans are already in place to try and implement a global vaccine passport system that relies on a centralized database, which should be a very, very big concern for everyone.
Here we are again. Yeah. Another moment where we were called conspiracy theorists for railing against the World Health Organization's plot when it comes to vaccine passports. And we were promised, weren't we? This is just for the pandemic. It's only temporary. Yeah. Don't worry, we're going to give you back your rights to travel. Lies, more lies from the World Health Organization.
Lies. I don't think it seems sinister at all. I think it seems like a group of leaders who want to make sure we're prepared if this happens again, because we certainly weren't last time.
I have to say, if there's a concern, the concern is this: who made the World Health Organization so powerful? Yeah. It's looking like they'll have more power. People in America, India, Scandinavia, or Britain will not be able to affect any of their policies, but yet their policies will affect the way we live.
Where will it end?
Yeah, and I think that needs to be looked at. And the worry, of course, is that thin end of the wedge.
These draconian systems are there to clearly violate an individual's right to choose what goes into their bodies through the restrictions of being able to exercise their freedoms, only affording them ultimatums. These restrictions are organised as a proxy to issue a form of social credit. Under the guise of fighting for a greater good of public health, it affords privileges and enforces restrictions to people depending on their level of compliance to overreaching government and corporate policies. Most people are statistically vulnerable to succumbing to a propagated ideal and becoming moral Puritans, despite the fact that purity does not and cannot exist. Yet the Puritan ideology is always authoritarian by nature. Pure in both moral conviction and conformation to the overarching authority above the rest, becoming a type of religion that arms technocrats with unfathomable amounts of power. If you don't get the injection that they get, or wear the mask that they tell you to wear, you are not pure. You are not one of them. You are not obedient to the orders of the state. You are impure. Many are still ignorant to the fact that this is the mere beginning of the social credit system of the West, in which your ability to travel, earn a living and socialise depends on whether you comply with overreaching government authority or not. It wasn't just about being forced to be injected with a substance born from the corrupt big pharma industry. It was a test of compliance to the state and mega corporate bureaucrats, an ushering in of toxic collectivist neoliberalist ideology, the commencing of authoritarianism right under our very noses.
Today, I'm proud to say that under the UK's presidency, the group of the world's 7 most advanced economies, the G7, is launching a set of public policy principles for retail central bank digital currencies, CBDCs.
The Chinese last month unveiled the world's first digital currency from a major power, currency that would not be printed but would exist only in cyberspace on your phone, for example. Is the Fed working on a digital dollar?
We are actually evaluating that. Most major countries are now looking at the possibility of having a digital currency and really asking the question, will that help the public? Will the public be better off? And will there be any negatives too? Will that have perhaps unexpected effects in other parts of the financial system that we need to consider in weighing the costs and benefits of this?
The core network that connects this all together to ensure absolute compliance is the ushering in of CBDCs, also known as central bank digital currencies. A central bank digital currency is a virtual currency issued and backed by a central bank and will only exist in digital form, so you can certainly say goodbye to your cash. The central bank will issue these virtual coins so that digital transactions and transfers become completely centralized on a network, controlled solely by banks and governments that run that network. Unlike decentralized cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, which have no centralized entities controlling the network, CBDCs will be run by banks and governments to control our financial system for each individual citizen. Currently, China is experimenting with the digital yuan, having an expiry date, and if you do not use it, you actually lose it. So if you fancy saving up, well, no can do, as control over money velocity, spending habits, and what citizens can in fact save up for is monopolised now under economical dominance. Control over what we're able to earn, save, and even spend. Manipulation of core aspects of our currency, such as programmable expiry dates, is just the start of what already seems like a very big problem. Not only will we have to worry about every transaction we make being tracked by surveillance systems monitored by governments and megacorporations that control our data and ultimately our fate, we will worry about how it's going to be used against us. The CBDC will likely integrate with systems like the vaccine passport and pair up with our digital IDs created to ensure absolute compliance to the rules and regulations that the state decides.
You can create a digital ID today that is much more easily protected, so you can deal with a lot of the privacy and surveillance issues that worry people. But it's a natural evolution of the way that we're going to use technology in any event to transact daily life. And this COVID crisis gives an additional reason for doing that.
Entire livelihoods can be stripped from us. Financial control and dominance is not a new concept within totalitarianism, but the tools to be able to do it with billions around the world digitally has never been available until today. Don't want to get vaccinated? No problem. Or you speak out against the party? Go for it. But just know they'll not only restrict your freedom to travel and participate in society, they'll restrict you economically. And without the ability to earn cash outside of the system created and controlled, how will you expect to live if all money is centrally manipulated and dominated? But just know, they'll not only restrict your freedom to travel and participate in society, they'll restrict you economically. And without the ability to earn cash outside of the system created, how will you expect to live if all money is centrally controlled?
What if I told you 90% now of the world's central banks say they're investigating central bank digital coins, whether pushed by the private sector, and I see some faces that I recognise in the audience, or working with the private sector, let's be clear. I think we all recognise that technology like central bank digital coins have the potential to reshape the financial system and revolutionise payments.
A monopolised financial system that's easily programmable and manipulated by authorities, which integrates with centralised databases to gain medical information, digital IDs, and personal records, is the dominion of humans. After everything these corrupt state officials and megacorporations have done, the majority of the public seem to do it as they are told. No matter what wrong comes to light, it seems there's either a collective amnesia or just a lack of desire to take responsibility and say no, and leave it all in the hands of a monopolised authority that can dictate their life choices for them. The deep coddling of the populace has resulted in the extreme infantilization of a spiritually broken society at the brink of a key turning point in our history. We truly are the middlemen of our time at the precipice of authoritarian doctrine.
And since then we established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while. A lot of people dying, but nowhere near the chaos. And now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it.
For us that know what the future holds, as well as those who are beginning to see the collapse of the world's current order, it's up to you as an individual sovereign being to decide how far this goes. Whether we allow staple authoritarian policies like the vaccine passport to continue and encourage the rest of the social credit system to be ushered in depends on our acceptance and compliance to the corrupted state and consumption of self-destructive values. They took that crucial inch through scaring the populace into compliance, and it's likely they'll go even further to try and take that full mile.